Hey guys, approaching the topic again of a BIC turntable service. What happens when you pull the cycling cam and you see that? There used to be a post there, busted off. Well, I'm here to help you. This is a reference cam that I made to mark the heights of the post based on the location. You can see from left to right, it's 7 millimeters, 11 millimeters, and 6 millimeters. And that's from the little donut sticking up there. So here's how you fix it. The first thing you do is you smooth over the surface area so that it's nice and flat. And then what you do is you get a drill bit. Come on, you piece of crap. There we go. We're going to get a drill bit and drill a tiny little hole the depth of the donut sticking up there. So let me drill that out. Now if you have a drill press, this is really handy, but at the moment I just have a hand drill. We're going to use a 1/16 of an inch drill bit, and I'm going to eyeball it best possible here. And we're going to drill a tiny little pilot hole. Take it real slow and real easy. And periodically, you want to check your depth. You do not want to exceed the depth of this thing. If you exceed the depth of that little donut, it's going to punch through on the cycling cam right in the track, and it's going to cause your machine to hang up. Okay, so that's about a 1/4 inch. No, not even that. About maybe 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 tops. If I had a gauge to there and measure it, I would. Yeah, I would say 1/8 of an inch. So now what we're going to do is go get a machine screw, self-tapping machine screw, and we're going to find one about the same diameter as one of these heads. Because really, what you're trying to do is mimic the post, so you want to get a screw about the same width as that head right there. They're all the same diameter, they're just different heights. So I'm going to go dig up a screw here. So here we've got a little tiny machine screw, self-tapping type. And we're going to very carefully insert this into the hole we've drilled in the cycling cam. Again, very carefully. Just take your time with it. Try to keep it as straight as possible. It looks like our hole is just a little bit too small, so I'm going to drill that out. Okay, so I used a 9/64 and drilled it out and stuck the screw in there. We're going to take a machinist rule and measure our height. And the top of it comes to about 8 millimeters. We need 7. So I'm going to turn this in another 1/2 turn and remeasure, all the while checking to make sure it's not protruding on the other side, which it hasn't. And remeasuring, we've got 7 millimeters. So now the screw's in there, but we're not done yet. What we have to do is reinforce this with epoxy and cover it so that it doesn't spill out all over the place. You want to make a diameter post similar to these. So what you do is you make up some epoxy and then slide a heat shrink sleeve over it to hold the epoxy in place while it dries. So let's get to doing that. We're going to use heat shrink tubing that unshrunk is about 5 millimeters in diameter. I happen to have all this stuff on hand, but you'll need to experiment based on the head of your screw. And according to this, the diameter of the post, the existing one is about 4.5 millimeters, so this screw head is also a little over 4.5, but pretty damn close. The cycling cam probably isn't going to care too much about 0.5 millimeter. So we're going to measure roughly to the top of the head of the screw. We're going to cut off the piece that we need and do a test fit. And the purpose of this is to come right to the top of the head of the screw. I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to get the camera to focus right here. It doesn't want to do it. See how it just comes to the top of the head of the screw there? That's kind of what you want. And so the epoxy will sit inside here and dry, and that way it will provide close to the right diameter for the head of the screw. You can apply a little bit of heat while it's drying with like a match or a heat gun on low to shrink it approximately to the right diameter that you need. But like I said, I don't think it's going to care too much about 0.5 millimeter. So let's get to mixing some epoxy up. Now I'm using Bob Smith Industries 5-minute quick cure epoxy. It's a 2-part. You can get it through Parts Express or directly through the company online. Just mix 2 equal parts. Here's the base, and then there's the hardener. And we'll vigorously mix those two together. It's going to be about 9 o'clock. I'm sure the phones are going to start ringing any second. And you see it go from clear to kind of translucent. It's ready to set up. Okay. So we're going to pull the heat shrink tubing off that we just put on here. And we're going to coat the screw with epoxy. You don't have to be sparing with this. The excess is going to come off when you put the heat shrink sleeve on. You see it's getting there. So let's slide the sleeve on here. And while that's setting up, what I'm going to do is get the heat gun and reduce the sleeve diameter ever so slightly. Until I just see it start to shrink around the screw. Just like that. I don't know if you guys saw that or not. Hope you did. And then I'm going to measure the diameter overall, which is about 5 millimeters. So that's exactly what we want. Wipe off the excess. As soon as the epoxy dries, cures in about 5 minutes. I'm not going to use it for probably another half an hour to an hour. When this dries, the epoxy inside dries fairly hard, about the same consistency as the plastic fiberglass resin of this. And then we'll just grease the hell out of it. And if the heat shrink sleeve comes off eventually, who cares? Then it'll be the perfect diameter. But anyways, you can also, if you so choose, once this hardens, cut away at the heat shrink sleeve. But realistically, a 0.5 millimeter difference isn't going to make much of a difference on the cycling cam. So now, as you can see, we've got 3 posts. This is a little bit fatter. I'll probably shrink this down a little bit more. But that just gives you an idea as to how to repair the busted posts on the BIC cycling cams. So instead of having to try to find a whole new cam, you can usually repair the one that you got. So again, find a screw of the right diameter, right height, very carefully drill it out. Do not exceed about 1/8 of an inch or it'll go through the plastic. Mix up epoxy, put it in the sleeve, which is a heat shrink sleeve, shrink it down, and then let it cure. And it's up to you whether you want to cut away the sleeve or not after you're done. I usually just leave it in place and grease it up. Hope this was helpful.